Hello, in this video we're going to learn how to solve equations containing fractions. So when it comes to these types of problems, you have a couple of alternatives, right? You can solve the equation by keeping the fraction and dealing with the operations with fractions. Another alternative is to eliminate the fractions altogether and deal with whole numbers as you solve for the variable. In my opinion, it's often a good idea to get rid of the variable, especially when you have equations that contain multiple fractions, okay? So for this particular lesson, I'm just going to eliminate the fraction regardless of how simple it is, okay, regardless of how many we have, just to get into that habit, so that when we do more complex ones, it'll be a little bit easier. So again, that goes back to prior knowledge. Do we know how to find the common denominator? So I have videos on how to finding the common denominator. So if you watch those videos, it'll teach you how to find the common denominator and, the LCD, which is the same thing as the common denominator. And then how to deal with that with fractions. When we add two different fractions with different denominators, finding the common denominator is a must, right? Unless we use the butterfly method, and then we can get around that. But for this particular lesson, we're going to eliminate the denominators by finding the common denominator and multiplying that common denominator with every term in the equation. So for problem number 1, the only fraction that we see is 13 over 2. So the common denominator has to be 2, because that is the only fraction that we see. So this is going to be your least common denominator, which is also known as your common denominator, and it's also known as your LCM, which they all mean the same thing, okay? All mean the same thing. So since our common denominator is going to be 2, okay, since my LCD is going to be 2 in this case, then I'm going to take that 2 and I'm going to multiply it by the entire fraction, or everything in the fraction. Okay? So I'm going to indicate that here. The common denominator in red is being multiplied by everything in the equation. That should make that a 4 instead. Sorry. Okay? Everything in the equation needs to be multiplied by 2. Okay, so and that's what we're going to remember. Once you find the common denominator, multiply it by everything in the equation on both sides, and then it'll eliminate every fraction that you see. Okay, again, 2 times m is just 2m, 2 times 4 is just 8, and then these 2's will cancel, and then you're just left with 13. And now you just solve this basic equation for m, and then you'll have your answer. Okay? So we'll subtract 8 on both sides. And then we're going to have 2m. 13 minus 8 is 5. And then we divide both sides by 2. And then now we have m equals 5 over 2. And that's it. And you don't really need to convert it to a mixed number or a decimal unless you're asked to. Okay? All right, let's look at the next example. Okay. In order to solve this one, I recommend that you convert any mixed number to an improper fraction. And we do that by multiplying the side number with the bottom number and then adding the top. Okay? So we're going to replace that 1 1/3 with an improper fraction. And again, 1 times 3 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and we write it over the original denominator. Okay? And now we could solve the equation by finding the common denominator. You notice that both the denominators are the same, so therefore my LCD is going to be 3. And then we take that 3 and we multiply it by everything in the equation on both sides. Oops. And I'll put the 3 on this side. Actually, you know, I didn't like the way that came out. Let me just... I'll put the 3 on that side, okay? So, yeah, we're going to take the 3 and multiply it by everything in the equation. And you notice what happens here. The 3's will cancel. And then you'll just be left with 8 equals 3 times x is 3x minus, and then look at these 3's. These both cancel. Then you're left with minus 4. Write that in black here. All right, there we go. So now we want to solve for x, just like any other equation, right? Get x on one side, numbers on the other. So I am going to add the 4, and that way I have 12 on the left equals 3x, and then I divide both sides by 3. And we're going to get 4 equals x. Okay, so that is our solution for that one, okay? So remember to, remember I said earlier, is make sure that you convert all mixed numbers to improper fractions, okay? Just make things a little easier. Just something to consider, okay? And then proceed with finding the common denominator, multiply that common denominator with everything in the equation, and then go from there, okay? All right, so let's do another example. Let's say you had this one. And you notice that we have the variables on the right. You notice that the term with the x term, there's only one of them, and it's on the right side. So we want to get rid of that negative 3 halves. The negative 3 halves times x, right? So the opposite of times is multiply. We can, the opposite of multiply is divide by negative 3 halves, or that's the same thing as multiplying both sides by the reciprocal of that. So we're going to take this, and we're going to take the reciprocal, okay? And we're going to do that, and that's going to be negative 2/3. Okay? So we take the reciprocal of that. Okay, so take the reciprocal of the coefficient of the variable term, which is negative 3 halves x. And you take the reciprocal of negative 3 halves, it's negative 2/3. Notice we keep the negative there. Okay, and then we want to do is we want to multiply that reciprocal on both sides of the equation. So we're going to take the negative 2/3 and we're going to multiply it by that on both sides of the equation. Sorry. Okay, and then simplify by multiplying the fractions straight across. Remember how to do that? So a negative and a negative is a positive, and then we just do 2 times 3, which is 6, over, and then now we do 3 times 2, which is still 6. And then a negative and a negative is a positive on the right, And you notice that the 3's and the 2's will cancel, and you're just left with x on the right side. Now 6 divided by 6 is 1, so therefore x equals 1 is the final solution. Okay, so that's something to consider. Okay, multiply the reciprocal, and then you'll have your answer for that. Okay. Okay, so okay, if you have this one, okay, how do you solve that? Well, look at the term with the variable. It's on the left side, 5v over 13. If it helps, you could also write it like this, 5 over 13v equals 25 over 39. Okay? Now, take the reciprocal of this term. Okay, so what is the reciprocal? Okay, well, that's going to give me 13 over 5. So now multiply 13 over 5 on both sides of the equation. Because what you do to one side, you got to do to the other, right? Okay? All right. So now, on the right, on the left side, the 13's cancel, the 5's cancel, so you're just left with v equals. And then now, I highly recommend you cross-cancel the 5 and the 25. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 25 5 times. Then 13 goes into 13 once. 39 divided by 13 is actually 3 times. And then we just multiply straight across. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 3 is 3. And then that would be your solution for that one. Okay? So multiplying the reciprocal on both sides when you have an equation like that would be the best way to go. Easiest way to go. Okay, so let's do another example. Okay, so now we want to consider getting rid of the fractions by finding the common denominator. And if you do the common denominator off to the side, right, remember? You can take each denominator and count by multiples and then circle the number that appears in both rows first. Start with the smaller denominator, 3, and do multiples. 3, 6, 9. You notice that 9 appears in both rows first. So my LCD will be 9. So now I take that 9 and I multiply it by everything in the equation. And this will reduce nicely. I'll put the 9 on this side, okay? And now we can cross-cancel the denominator with the LCD. So 3 goes into 3 once. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then I do 3 times 5x, which is 15x. See how that worked? 3 times 5 is 15x. Now I cross-cancel this 3 with that 9 again. 9 divided by 3 is 3. And then I do 3 times 4, which will give me 12. And just so you know, I'm multiplying these numbers right here. 3 times 5x is 15x. 3 times 4 gives me the positive 12. Equals, And then these 9s cancel, and now I just have -8 that's left over here. And I write that down here. Okay? So that's my equivalent equation, and then I don't have to worry about fractions anymore, or their operations. All I can do now is just solve for x, and it's whole numbers, so it should be a lot more simpler. Okay? So subtract 12 on both sides. And that's going to be -20. Because if you add the two numbers and keep the negative, you get -20. And then I'll divide both sides by 15. And we should be really good to go. Now I consider reducing this fraction by dividing both of those numbers by 5, right? So 20 divided by 5 is going to be 4. And then 15 divided by 5 is 3. Whoops. It's 3. So x equals 4/3 is my final answer. Okay? All right. I want to show you another example with fractions, of course. All right, that's a long equation, looks complicated, but it's really not. Once you find the common denominator and multiply everything, you're going to see every one of those fractions disappear, and then you'll have an equation with whole numbers. And it looks like we may have to combine some like terms, but before we do any of that, I recommend you just find the common denominator first. Okay? And the common denominator we have to do, listen, we're going to find it between 2, 3, and 12. Okay? And just do multiples. Start with the smaller ones first. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Sorry. 10, 12. And then do 3, 6, 9, 12. And you notice that 12 is going to appear in each row first. So therefore, my LCD, or common denominator, is in fact 12. So, what does this mean? Okay, that means we're going to take the 12 and we're going to multiply it by everything in the equation. Alright. May seem a little tedious, but I'm telling you, it's worth it. And I wish I had more room, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to erase this here. Okay, so we agreed that our LCD was 12, right? Okay, and okay, so we're going to multiply it by these last two terms. Minus 12 times 2. Okay. And so remember, we can cancel everything out now, okay? So let's go ahead and do the math, the algebra. 12 times negative x, that's just negative 12x. Okay, and then the 2 cancels. 12 divided by 2 is 6, right? And then 6 times 1x is just 6x. Okay, so again, I'm multiplying these together, and I'm getting a positive 6x. Bring down the equal sign. These 12s cancel, and I'm just left with the 67 on top. 12 times x is 12x, plus, and you notice this 3 cancels. 12 divided by 3 is 4. And then I'm doing 4 times 5, which is 20, and then this is going to be negative 24. All right, and we're going to have to do some combining like terms here, okay? So we're going to combine these two together. Negative 12x plus 6x is still negative 6x. And then here we can combine 67 plus 20, which I believe is 87, and then 87 minus 24 is 63. Plus 12x. Okay, and I would probably subtract 12x on both sides. That way these cancel, and now you have negative 18x equals 63. Then divide both of these by negative 18. And then you have x equals negative 63 over 18, which we can reduce. If we divide these by 9, then you will have negative 7 over 2. So x equals negative 7 over 2 would be your final answer for that one. Okay, I have one more example I want to show you. X equals okay, so it's a good idea to find the common denominator. And when you do multiples of 2, 3, and you're going to see that 18 is going to appear in all 3 rows. So the common denominator is going to be 18. Okay, so we're going to take that 18 and we're going to multiply it by everything in the equation. All right, so we could do that if we actually, you know what I wanted to do first? I wanted to distribute the parentheses. I guess you could do it this way. I meant to do something else, but I guess let me go ahead and let me go ahead and distribute the parentheses, the negative 5/3 with the parentheses here, so we can just get rid of it. Okay, so basically negative 5/3 times x is negative 5/3 x, right? Just kind of put them together. Okay, plus, and then now a negative and a positive is a negative. So I should have wrote that first. And then 5 times 1 is 5. 3 times 3 is 9. Okay? And then now, once you clear the parentheses, okay, then you can multiply the 18 by that. Okay, and then you're going to see everything is going to cancel out beautifully. Okay, so let me just recap of what I did, all right, in case I confused anyone. What I recommend you do is distributing the negative 5/3 with the x plus 1/3 in the parentheses, and then that way you can get negative 5/3 x, right? And when you do negative 5/3 off to the side here, if you do negative 5/3 times 1/3, I can't seem to write anymore. I guess after doing these videos, fingers get a little loose with the pen here. Negative 5/3 times positive 1/3. Remember, you're multiplying straight across. Okay, so that's going to give you a negative 5 over 9. So make sure we know how to multiply fractions. And then now we can distribute the 18 on both sides of the equation, which I've already wrote on the left side, so I don't want to erase that again. Okay, and then now just watch what happens. Okay, the 18s will cancel. You're just left with 29 plus 2 divided by 2 is that cancels. 18 divided by 2 is 9, and then 9 times 1x is just 9x. 3 cancels. 18 divided by 3 is 6. 6 times minus 5x is negative 30x. Okay, and then minus, and then you notice that this 9, okay, cancels, and then 9 goes into this 18 2 times, and then 2 times minus 5 is minus 10. Whoops, keep writing it in the wrong color here. Okay, and now you have a simple equation that you can totally solve for without worrying about fractions. Okay, so now we just need to get all the x's on one side and all the numbers on the other, and we're good to go. Okay, so now it's just a matter of what side you want to get the x on. Okay, let's get it on the left side and move over the numbers to the right. I mean, it really doesn't matter. Okay, but these will cancel, and then you're just left with 9x equals minus 30x, and then this is going to be minus 39, right? And then now I just add 30x to both sides, and that gives me 39x equals minus 39. Then I divide both sides by 39, and I'm finally left with x equals minus 1. So, okay, so let's recap. Let's make sure we know what we're doing here. So remember, if you want to find the LCD of 18, remember, okay, I did multiples of each denominator separately, right? So I started with 18, and then I had 2, and then I had 3. Then I said, okay, if I make multiples of these, starting with the smallest ones first, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, and if I continue, I'll get 18. And I do the same here, 3, 6, 9, and if I continue, I'll get 18. And then I circle 18, okay, in each row first. So that's 1, 2, and then here's the other one. So therefore, my LCD was in fact 18. Then I multiplied 18 on both sides of the equation, but before I did that, I distributed the negative 5/3 with everything in the parentheses, and I did the math here, and I got negative 5/3 x minus 5/9. And then I multiplied everything by 18. You notice the whole left side, I got 29 plus 9x. However, on the right side, okay, I did the 18 times minus 5/3x, and I canceled the 3 with the 18, and I got 6. 6 times minus 5x, I got minus 30x. And then I canceled the second 9 with the 18, and I got 2. And then I did 2 times minus 5, I got negative 10. Okay? So, if this helps, what you could have done is this one, you could have did this. Right? Could have separated it. You know, if that was easier. And then what I did is I just cancel, right? 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 18 6 times, and then I did 6 times minus 5x, and I got the minus 30x. Here I did 9 cancels, 18 into 9. 9 into 18 is 2. 2 times minus, don't forget the negative sign, the negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. Okay? Alright, so I hope that this video was really helpful. Thank you for watching.